I teach nurses how to systematically go through any process of whatever case scenario they give you to successfully complete it and lead it, and be successful in the case scenario portion. So it really didn't start out with helping people like that, but as people started coming to me, I started to formulate a program.
Welcome back to the Investing on RN podcast. Today we are joined by Janessa Dean, who went from jumping out of helicopters and saving lives to now jumping on coaching calls with clients. Obviously, there was more to that whole transition, so we'll get into all that and your story and how you got into nursing and coaching and all that. So we're excited to have you here. I think it's going to be a great episode.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell us about kind of the beginnings for you, like when you were a kid. So when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a tree comber, I think is what it was called. I would climb trees, pick pine cones, cut the tops off them. It was like fifth grade. Everybody was like doctor, firefighter. I was like, no, I'm going to pick pine cones from like 200-foot trees. So did you know when you were a little kid in school, you were going to be a flight nurse doing all these crazy shifts and all that stuff?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. So interesting. But I would consider myself, I guess, still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I don't know. I This is my fourth job change. When I graduated college, I got my degree in communications with an emphasis in broadcast journalism, and I did that for some time and was like, this is not for me. Then I went into banking 5 years, and then I started to have kids. And I actually, my twins were born 3.5 months early, so they spent 75 days in the NICU. And during that time, I was like, wow, what is this nursing thing? What is this critical care thing? Like, I loved the NICU experience. I'm like, I want to do that. And so that's kind of where my interest grew into nursing. And I decided to go to nursing school when they were still babies. And so nursing was kind of my third shift in a career, and then now jumping to life coaching, this is my fourth shift. It's never ever been something like, hey, I've always wanted to do flight nursing growing up. It just kind of happened to me as life events happened, and it felt natural, and it was really where I wanted to take my nursing career. Ultimately, when I wanted to go into nursing school, I knew I wanted to get into flight. So it was something early on that I wanted to do in my nursing career.
Wow. So those first three are like extremely, very drastically different. I think that nursing and coaching, that there's kind of, I see a lot of people kind of bridging those together because like the whole nursing burnout and all this stuff that nurses have to go through, it's very intertwined. But what made you decide to go from like those first three that are so drastically different, I guess? You kind of went into your nursing decision, but then what about the first three that led to the nursing?
Yeah, I think I'm just the type of person who isn't afraid to change if I don't like something, or if I feel like I need to be doing something else. So I think, when I got into broadcast journalism, it got to a point where it was like, do you move to this podunk city and kind of work at these terrible wages with these terrible hours for X amount of time to get to where you want to be? And at that point, like, I was already pregnant, we were starting a family. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So I think like life circumstances really had me change that. And I just wasn't afraid to kind of make that leap and make that change. And then, I really don't know where banking came from. It was just an opportunity that someone offered me. And then I got into it, and it was great at the time. But then I was like, who wants to work 6 days a week and on commission? I was like, what is this nursing life? I need to do this 3 days a week, make great money. You have 4 days off. And so ultimately, like I said, with my NICU experience, and then that with wanting to have my time back, that's kind of what made me hop into nursing. But I think just like not being afraid to jump to the next thing because I wasn't happy was really what created those early on changes for me.
This episode is sponsored by All Day Investments. If you would like to get your start in real estate investing, but don't want to deal with toilets or tenants, we have several new opportunities that might interest you. Head over to alldayinvestments.co/invest or follow the link in our show notes to book a call with our team.
Was your spouse or partner involved in all these different changes, and what was their opinion?
Yeah, he definitely knew what he was getting into before he married me. So, yeah, I mean, I think the first couple ones, he was like, what is this? What are we doing? Because I really focused on putting him through school while we had kids early on. And then He was like, "Oh, now we got to go back to square one and not have two incomes and put you through school." But he's always been really supportive and been on board with it. I think the biggest leap for my husband was going from flight nursing to life coaching, because that was a huge letting go of the income I was making with that and the security of that, to like the unknowing of entrepreneurship, right? That took some time to get on board with until I started to create a little bit of success. So I think later on his hesitancy was in that decision than the ones before that.
So going from, I think it's interesting just because like people find nursing in so many different ways. We talk to a lot of people that like they have family, like Josh's family was all nurses. Mine wasn't. I like came across nursing at a campground talking to some guy. And so there's so many different ways, but like for you to have this experience that like a lot of people might push them out of the hospital forever, never want to go back. And now all of a sudden you're working in the hospital. Going forward in your career, did you have, burnout's a big thing within, I feel like it's more in the hospital than in these like fields like flight nursing and like Josh is a CRNA now. Did you experience a degree of that? Is that what pushed you to flight nursing or was it just something you said you always wanted to do it, but
Yeah, you know what? I have to be honest. I think there were periods where I experienced like the weight of the job. Both just working in critical care, ICU. I did ICU for 6 years and then I moved to flight for about seven. But I never experienced burnout. And I think that attributed to the fact of like I was always thinking ahead of where I wanted to be. And so I always knew like where I was going would lead up to where I wanted to go. And I think like that forward thinking really helped me to not be stuck in my circumstances of burning out. Although, I mean, there's just moments where, you're around a lot of death, you're around a lot of pressures and a lot of responsibility. I think a lot of that affected me at times. And that's really how coaching kind of helped bring me out of those times of not spinning out in complete and utter, burnout. I knew ultimately that I wasn't going to be spending time in the hospital forever because I knew flight was always going to be my next thing. And really, honestly, working pre-hospital, it's hard to kind of go back to the hospital setting when you do pre-hospital. You have your own protocols, you're running your own calls. I don't foresee myself ever really, unless I had to, going back to a hospital setting. Just now, kind of knowing the other part of it for myself.
what's the because for me personally, like burnout, like yeah, the patient load was tough and there was difficult patients and but for me it was like management was just like the bane of my existence in the hospital. But like when you're working, because like from my understanding we actually interviewed another flight nurse, and he's kind of breaking down how it works and it's something I was interested in for a while.
Yeah.
But what's the structure, I guess? Like, is there a hierarchy? Who are you answering to? Is that anything like being in the hospital?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely still have the same types of structures. You have your clinical educators, you have your medical director, you have your manager, you have your directors that are kind of above your manager, but still above you. So you still have the hierarchy of people. But I would say, I mean, for me personally, I can't speak to every flight nurse, but for me personally, when you have one critical patient and you're just with that one patient, it's really hard to have burnout because you're not having to have your time between two to three other patients or constant. I mean, we have the turnover, right? But we're dealing with one critical patient at a time. And so I think like that really prevented me from really having ever burnout, because going from the hospital to having one patient was the most ideal situation. And then you're not on the floor with your manager. So your manager's not like in your face all of the time. There's a level of autonomy that you have as a flight nurse. And then there are really just resources that you can go to and use. But I think like, everybody's kind of plagued with a manager situation or had a situation like that in nursing. I actually was a manager for about 9 months. I left flight nursing because I thought, oh, let's do this manager thing. And I ended up being a manager right when COVID started. And I was like, I, it was great. It was a great experience, but I felt like as a critical care nurse, I needed to be hands on with the patients, with what was going on. And so I immediately kind of went back into flight too.
You were saying before we hit record that flight nursing, your schedule is like 24-hour shifts, like 7 or 8 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
And, like, the burnout in anesthesia when I did it, it came from, like, I was very similar, like, I take care of one person per surgery or whatever, one at a time, so the burnout You said you didn't experience burnout because it's one at a time, but I definitely experienced that, but it was more from, like, the extra shifts that you're picking up, like, "Oh, here's some extra money, let me go make it." Did you find yourself falling into that trap of, like, picking extra 24-hour shifts, or is that even an option in what you were doing?
Yeah, it definitely is an option. I didn't do very many overtime shifts just because 24 hours was a long time in itself. And the way actually our schedule worked, we were really fortunate. We worked 24 on, then we had 24 off, and then we worked another 24 on, and then we had 5 days off in a row. So because of that, I mean, I think early on in my flight nursing career, I may have picked up a lot of shifts, but I just didn't do a ton of overtime. I actually worked in a company where I made more as a flight nurse, which is not necessarily true for everywhere over the country, but I made more than I worked in the hospital, so I didn't have that need to pick up overtime. And I also have 4 kids at home, so like really spending time with them was really important to me. So I actually doubled my salary when I went to flight nursing. So I
Oh, wow.
didn't run into the need, I guess, to like work the overtime. But I know a lot of people who did. But I imagine if I did that, I would have created probably some burnout for myself just with the stressor of the job. Yeah, for sure.
Is there a one thing I have to know, is there a whiteboard in the, helicopter?
What?
Oh, I guess you guys don't have the whiteboards. That was, like, the big thing. It was, like, you gotta fill in your name and, like, all that stuff.
Oh my goodness.
No, that's the best part about not working in the hospital. Are you kidding me? You don't have someone saying, "Did you put your name and extension on there?"
Yeah.
No, we definitely did not have the whiteboard, and that's really what I loved about the job, you know? You work from this protocol book, and it's a guideline, and, you just rely on your critical thinking skills, and, you get to do a lot of cool stuff, like, we gotta do intubations, we were trained on chest tubes and, surgical crikes and all kinds of things, so it was just, it was a good, like, level up and yeah, no whiteboard in the helicopter. Definitely not.
You were in a helicopter. I know the last guy he was in fixed wing and did more long distance transport and stuff. So what type of situations were you put in coming from a helicopter? Because I assume you're going to places where it's hard to get to with other, like, I don't know, ambulances and planes and stuff. So what was your typical scene? What does that look like?
Yeah, I had a great opportunity that I worked for a company where we had 3 bases at 1 base. So because of that, we housed 2 helicopters and 1 airplane. So we got to work fixed wing and rotor, a bunch because we had 3 aircrafts there. But, it really depended on which aircraft I was on for that day. So there was an aircraft that I predominantly flew on that went out to 911 calls, and where my area is located, it's very rural. So we have a lot of, and agricultural. So we have a lot of ag accidents, tractor accidents, people getting ran over, or things, arms, limbs getting stuck in machinery. We have a lot of water and a ski resort too. So we had a lot of ski accidents. We had a lot of drownings. And then there's a high like gang trauma traffic accidents, were kind of typical 911s that we would go to too. So that was kind of cool because it wasn't always just hospital to hospital transfers. We had a lot of 911 calls where we'd get a land at the scene in the mountains or at the lake or on the ski resort or in the middle of the freeway, which kind of changed up like your expectancy of the everyday just transfer, which was kind of nice to do that. But we didn't do rescues, meaning that we weren't responsible for rescuing the patient. We worked with the CHP and the police department as they would do the rescues, and then they would transfer the patient off to us for a higher medical care. But there were some times where we were the first ones on scene. Like for example, let's say like a car rolled down a hill, we were the first ones to get there, and we would hike down, get the patient on our stretcher, and we would hike them back up. So it wasn't always the case, but we had opportunities like that.
We're gonna get into the coaching for sure, but, I saw that you were doing some coaching in terms of, helping first responders or nurses get into flight nursing. Um, and like I mentioned before, it's something I was interested in.
Yeah.
But I think the cool thing about that and nursing in general is that like our podcast is kind of to teach financial awareness and all that, so you can have an out if you want it. But even within nursing, just seeing these other fields and these other areas, I think is so cool. So what did that look like for you in terms of the coaching other people to get into flight nursing?
It was something that wasn't expected when I first started out. As I was kind of telling you guys before we started, my interest in coaching just came from me hiring my own coach. And I just had three teenagers at the time. And I was like, how do I parent three teenagers, work a 24-hour shift, have the weight of the job, have my husband and my friends and family and all these things? And so that really helped me with my work life balance. And when I figured that all out, I was like, I want to put these tools in the hands of every nurse and every healthcare worker so that they can balance out their life, so that they don't create burnout, like you were saying, and so that they can create whatever result they want in their life, whether it's staying with nursing or staying with their career that they're working their shift work or doing something else. And so it started out just like really wanting to help people. And my focus was just general life coaching, work life balance, helping with imposter syndrome, helping with confidence, helping with doubt. And it turned into people coming to me asking me how to get into flight nursing. So it was like one of those things that I hadn't planned, but when I when they started coming to me, I'm like, "Wait, I do know how to help you. I've done this for almost 7 years. I've precepted for 6 of those 7 years. I've trained people. I've sat in a ton of interviews. I know what they're looking for." And so it kind of started me creating a program to help people get into it, and then people were one by one getting into it quicker and faster. And so I have just created like basically a preparation for them to get into it. And it's a 3-step program. It's a mindset preparation. Whereas like you have to believe that you're a flight nurse before you even go into that interview, or they won't believe you either. So it's a big mindset preparation. And then two, I help them with panel interviews, so like what the key players who are in the panel interviews and what to expect, the questions to expect, and what kind of they're looking for. And then the third part is case scenarios, where as most of the interview, 50% to 75% of flight nurse interviews are case scenarios. So I teach nurses how to systematically go through any process of whatever case scenario they give you to successfully complete it and lead it, and be successful in the case scenario portion. So it really didn't start out with helping people like that, but as people started coming to me, I started to formulate a program. And I would say 75% of my clients are nurses who either want to map out their plan, who are early on just starting in nursing school, or ones who are just getting ready to apply. And I also have flight nurses that I help after their transition over, who are already doing flight nursing.
And as far as like the safety factor, because like obviously you hear about these helicopters crashing and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
is what's that like, and how did you kind of justify with 4 kids getting in a helicopter? Not every day, but when you work.
Yeah, what's interesting, like, about that question is I do get asked that a lot, and I really do have this belief that we just don't hear about it as much, and so when we do, it's catastrophic, obviously, when we do see these medevac accidents, because most people don't survive it. But the thing about working in a helicopter and working just in an aircraft in general is that you have very low risk as opposed to driving to work every day for your shift work. I mean, we have traffic accidents happen all the time and people die all the time in those. You just don't hear about them because they're so prevalent. And with flight nursing, you hear these medevac accidents and they don't happen as much. And so they're highly publicized. And so I do think like that part of it is safe when it comes to comparing yourself of getting into the car and doing everyday life, but it is something that I do tell my clients and I do coach on. Like it is something you do have to come to terms with, that that is a risk, obviously, that you are taking, because most crashes don't end up in survival. So it is something I think you have to go into having, I don't know if okayness is the right word, but having asked yourself that question. And for me, I just knew I wanted to do something meaningful, and I knew that that job was what I wanted to do, that created that for me, and so I knew that risk was there, and I wanted to do it, kind of anyway.
Yeah, I think so, and like the whole thing about like being at more at risk driving to work, but like not just that, but like being in an ambulance, like flying through red lights and stuff with everybody texting on their phones and like yeah, I guess you don't you don't hear about that because like it is more common. So
And I don't know about you guys, but when I worked in the ICU, I was like 9 months pregnant, and I don't my pregnant belly attracted crazy people. Like, I would have the crazy patient who'd be kicking me in the belly. I mean, you guys all know, you work ER, and I'm sure you did critical care too. It's like, sometimes you're at more risk working in the hospital, I think, than, kind of the situations that we were in for sure.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that when you went from the hospital to flight nursing, you doubled your salary, and that kind of, I don't know if that like gave you some relief or gave you like you didn't feel like you needed to pick up any shifts. So these clients that you're working with now, you said a lot of them are new nurses. Are you kind of encouraging them to get into flight nursing so they can start some side business, or is there anything involved in like entrepreneurship, or are you just trying to get them through nursing school and through other parts of the hospital?
Yeah, that's a good question. When people come to me, I don't really steer them in any direction. Like, usually they come to me with something that they want to work on. So, for example, like if it's a nursing student, they're like, "Hey, I'm trying to figure out just how do I transition from being a nursing student to a nurse, which is a huge transition, as you know, and which department do I want to go to?" And most of them who come to me want to get into critical care, and they're like, "Okay, so which med surge floor do I need to kind of start on before I do that?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? You don't need to start med surge." So sometimes it's just building that confidence of whatever the next step is they want to get to, and helping them take out the in between that they don't need to kind of go through. And I'm like, we don't need to do med search for a year. If you want to do ER or ICU, let's talk about interview skills that we can kind of pick up, as someone who doesn't have that experience, to get you kind of hired in the department that you want to get hired in now. So I really just listen to them of what they're wanting help with. Like, that being said, I do have some people that come to me and are like, "Hey, I want to get into real estate and I'm an ICU nurse. Like, how do I do both? Like, how do I overcome the thoughts of like being a realtor or like investing like you guys are?" And I'm just kind of helping them walk through what are some of the obstacles and thoughts and feelings that they're having that are standing in their way of having both. And that's really what we coach on. So, really, it's like me figuring out what they're wanting more help with, and then me asking the questions to help them overcome some of those obstacles and get the clarity they need to be able to move forward with whatever it is for their self that they're trying to get to.
So when somebody first signs up with you, what does the first week or what does the first month look like? As far, is it very like we're doing something every day, or you give them a bunch of homework, or like what does that look like when somebody comes in and starts to work with you?
Yeah, I think it's very tailored to every person. So, for example, we have a consult call together, where they'll tell me, like, what are the things that you want to work on in the next 6 months? And then we create kind of a roadmap and a plan and some goals together based on what they're wanting to work on. We create that goal list in the consult call. And then from there, really our time together looks like getting through those goals, and every week working towards those and moving the needle forward through them. So, for example, if they came to me and they want to work on flight nursing, we have a whole list of goals that we're working on as they're trying to get hired or trying to get offers. And then every week, I guess, it just depends on the person and where they're at, and if they want to have a piece of homework or not. Hey, these are the kind of things that will help you move the needle forward this week. Can you go out and do that? And there's some accountability in having a coach, right? Like, you're not going at it alone, and you're not being like, "Oh, I'll do it next week," because the next week they're going to meet with me and I'm going to be like, "Did you meet with that recruiter? Did you reach out to that company? Did you work on your resume?" And it's going to be a yay or nay thing. So there is a little bit of accountability in it. And I would say, like, I'm a tough coach. So yeah, I think there is some pieces of homework every week that they're working on. And really, like, my goal is to get them the results of everything that they want on that list in our time together before that 6 months, so that we can start working on some new goals that they can kind of achieve at the same time. So, long answer to that question is, I think it looks different for every person based on kind of what they're wanting. But I will push you. I'm definitely a coach that's going to kind of push you to get there.
So what is it from your point of view that you're looking for in a client? Because obviously, like, well, I don't know. Are you having more people applying than you're accepting? And then what does that process look like if somebody wants to work with you?
Yeah, so if someone wants to work with me, basically, they can. I do all my marketing on Instagram, and there's a link on there. They just book a consult, and then we kind of talk about what it would look like to work together. We make kind of that roadmap and those goals together, and then they basically at the end of the call, I offer for them if they feel like it's a good fit or not for them. If it's a yes, then we get forward working. I have two ways of working with me. One is one-on-one. So one-on-one looks like 3 months of weekly sessions together. I like the weekly because it's accountability, right? It's like every week we're working towards it together. And then the other way to work with me is in a group. So I coach all healthcare workers and first responders. And then I have a subset of people that are nurses that want to get into flight nursing, but I do a group coaching program that focuses on anyone who's a healthcare worker and a first responder. So that's 6 months of group coaching. Everybody's working towards a different goal, but we come together every week and coach towards the goals. And what you'll find is people in healthcare, we're facing the same things. We're facing confidence issues, doubt, imposter syndrome, management, dealing with other coworkers, all those things. And so those are kind of the things that we're coaching on that's helping them also move the needle forward to their individual goals. So every person is like kind of different what their goal plan looks like and how we're kind of coaching together, but those are the kind of two different ways to work with me.
As far as like performance, like let's say you take on a client and like each week they're just not doing their homework or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
They get the boot.
Yeah, do they get the boot? Like, is it like, I mean, like, how do you? Because obviously, like your time's valuable, and there's other people out there, and if somebody's not performing, there's somebody else that will, and spots are limited. So it's like, how do you decide that?
I think, when you come to me, you have skin in the game already. Obviously, you're paying also for my coaching. And so I work with people who are not procrastinators. I attract people who are overachievers. In fact, I attract people who work two jobs or have a job and have their own business or are working three jobs, people who are kind of like a little bit like me. And so most people I'm not coaching on procrastination or how to get things done. Most people I'm coaching on how do we scale back so that we can really do the things that we want to do and do them with the most potential, and make the most out of our time. But to answer that question, I think that's discovered on the consult call. I don't say yes to everybody. So on that consult call, I'm just saying, like, are you going to be a good fit for me? As well as you're figuring out, am I a good fit coach for you? Because there's tons of coaches out there, right? And I like consider myself to be a pretty tough coach as far as like accountability. And so really on that call, I can just see, like, is this something that you really want? Is this something you're really wanting to work towards? I think like a key question I ask my people who are trying to get into flight on that first call to determine that is, are you willing to hear no 10 times before you get a yes? And some people are like, "No, I don't wanna hear that many no's," and I'm like, "That's really what I'm gonna help you do is build resilience to hear no to get to your yes," and that's really those are really the clients that I'm looking for, are the ones who are willing to hear no 10 times to get to the yes. And so I really don't have very many clients like that early on. I think like I don't say yes to everybody, and sometimes I'm not a good fit for everybody too. So in that first conversation, we're kind of figuring out, is it a good fit for both of us or not?
I heard from somebody recently at a conference. It was like rejection is God's protection.
Yeah.
So how do you coach them through dealing with that? Because I guess for some people it is 10 rejections.
Or way more sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the normalcy of failing. It's like to build success, it isn't about succeeding all the time. To build success, it's like being willing to pile on all of those failures that you had, being willing to hear no, being willing to fail over and over again. And that's really the premises of my coaching. It's not like always having positive thoughts and always being successful. It's like, how do you have an okayness when you're not successful? Like that's actually what creates the momentum. That's actually what gets you the result, is if you are willing to build that resilience of always of hearing no and sometimes things not going your way or getting what you want. um that's really like what I help people coach through.
Yeah. I think I saw somewhere recently where it said, those people that are successful or gurus or that are successful or something, they've all of them have failed way more times than you will ever try.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just becoming more okay with failing.
Yeah, it's like, and my coaching really focuses on your thoughts and your feelings, create the actions that you drive, which create the results that you have in your life. So it's like building up that resilience to have some of those negative thoughts and feelings sometimes. Like, how do you have doubt? How do you be nervous? How do you be scared and still be successful? Like, that's really what I'm helping my clients create. And that means sometimes you don't hear no the first time. Oftentimes it's not. I mean, yes, the first time. Oftentimes you don't hear yes the first time. It's like, just keeping going at it until you do.
Yeah. Have you implemented any of like the Aaron Rodgers, like going away in a dark cave for like 2 or 3 days at a time?
I have not heard of that. What? Is that what he does?
I don't know. He did that like I think when he was trying to decide. I don't know. So Josh is from Green Bay, so he's a Packers fan. So
This is the first time I've heard this.
you didn't hear about this?
This sounds like it's boo hockey right now.
Oh no, no. He like I think when he was like trying to decide, he like went away somewhere and was like in a dark room. And this is like something that's like been popular. I don't know. I don't know if he was doing drugs in there or what he was doing, but he picked the Jets.
Okay, but was it successful? That's my question. Did that create success for him?
Well, he picked the Jets and he
He created a torn
yeah,
Achilles.
yeah, he tore his Achilles like 8 minutes into the season. So I guess he was probably doing drugs in there. So maybe not good for your clients.
No. And definitely like that's the thing about having a coach, and that's really what I enjoy about having a coach is like you have all these thoughts in your head that are spinning and creating all this drama, and as your own self you can't see them. So the power of the coach is that they can expel some of those thoughts or those thought errors that you're having, show them back to you so that you can realize, "Hey, this is the thought that's keeping me from getting there, and how do we work on that thought to help us move forward from it?" So, I mean, in that case, I wouldn't recommend going into a dark cave for 3 days because you can't hear your own thoughts or make sense of them, that's for sure.
I haven't tried it yet. I'll let you know though.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, there's a theme of like a lot of the guests that we have on here, or just successful people in general. They all have their own coach, and coaches have their own coach. Like if you don't have your own coach or you're not part of some community or mentorship program, then I mean I don't know where I was going with this, but like all successful people are part of these type of programs.
Yeah.
For me, I wanted to still be able what I liken it to is like I still wanted to be able, you have NFL coaches, like for example, who aren't in the game anymore, but they're coaching, obviously, right? But for me, I wanted to still be able to coach while I was still in the game and like
Yeah.
still know what was going on and have my finger on the pulse. And so I think like obviously there's going to be time where I'm going to get away from it, but I think that draws a lot of people to trusting me, especially who work in critical care and in these high stress environments. It's like they already know that I've been there. Like they already know that I've seen it and that I feel it. And so like there's already that sense of trust, which I think like sometimes healthcare workers, we don't want to talk about our feelings and we definitely don't want to tell anybody about the hard times that we've had. And so there's already like this innate trust that I know what they've been through and I've been there myself too. So I think that really helps as a coach. And I'm a strong believer in like that's what creates success for yourself too. I have a coach that I coach with every week. It's just impossible to see your own thoughts to help you like get past some things.
I think like even what you said in the beginning about when you start with a client, you kind of take a step back and like, okay, you're doing all this stuff. Let's just take a break. And now there's like so much information available like at our fingertips, and it's like I know like back in October, I went to back conferences where I was just like I was in one for 3 days, flew home, went straight to another one, and I felt like I just needed to like go sit in the mountains for like a few days and just like process everything.
You mean go into a dark cave for 3 days?
Not the dark cave,
That's what he meant to say.
Okay.
without the drug and no drugs, but, like, just take a minute to just kinda, like, process what I had just gotten, but, like, of course, I didn't because then, the weekend ended and it was time to get back to work, so it's like,
Yeah.
how do you kinda work through that? Because I know, like, especially as we branched out of nursing into entrepreneurship, it's like we're a lot more busy now, but, like, you leave these, like, extra shifts that you're doing, you lose that income you were making from that.
Yeah.
So now we're trying to justify all this work we're doing as entrepreneurs, but then there's, like, all this noise and information coming in, it's just like, how do you work through that?
Yeah, I think it's like connecting really back to what you really value and what your reasoning for doing it. My why was like always very strong. Like I wanted to be able to help people in a way that maybe they couldn't get from just working shift work. Like I wanted to help create confidence in people so that they could go out there in these critical situations and be really confident in saving that person's life and in turn really helping their communities too. And so I think like your value has to be really strong of why you're wanting to do it and always being able to reconnect and go back to that, whatever it is, whatever you get into entrepreneurship for. And then the second part of that is really be focused on the result that you want to create for yourself. So Like, know what your 3-year plan is. Know what you want in a year, where you want to be and what that's going to look like. Know what you want your 2-year to be like. Know what you want 3 years to be like, or however far you want to go. Because if you focus on the circumstances and the hard that's now, then it's just going to take you longer to get there. You're going to get stuck in that mind drama. So I'm always focusing on, like, where do I want to be in a year, and what can I do small right now that's going to move the needle forward to helping me get there. And I think, like, sometimes we get caught in that thought because it's like, are we doing enough when we're doing all of these things? And so it's really noticing, catching your brain saying, like, hey, maybe I'm not doing enough, maybe I'm not doing enough, but reminding yourself, hey, what I'm doing is enough to create where I want to be in a year.
Are you doing any, because you got the business going, sounds like, out of nursing now, are you doing any kind of, like, other businesses or investments or anything like that?
No, but my husband's kind of dabbling in the real estate investments, and that's our 2-year
Okay.
goal. Actually, it was our 3-year goal, but now we're a year in. My 2-year goal from now is to retire him and him go solely into investments. So we are making some real estate investments every year, kind of slowly, and that's my goal, is to in 2 years retire him with my income, and then him go straight into investing. So, yes, we are, but no, I don't know anything about it because he's handling all of it.
That's very passive, I like that model.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's interested in it. I'm focused on this. So, yeah, no, I'm not doing anything else. I think, like, that's what's helped create success for my business right now, is just really um staying simplified and just this one offer that I'm doing, and sticking in this one thing. I think that's helped me because, as an overachiever brain, I'm like, oh, I want to do this business and I want to do this and I kind of want to work for DM here and I all this stuff, but I have to, like, keep myself very constrained, which has been really helpful for me to simplify it.
That's great. Yeah, we definitely or me struggle with like, oh, there's so many things that I want to do. I'm just going to do all of them
Yeah.
right now.
Which we can do, right? Like, we can do that, and I've done that definitely in the past, but that always, I think, doesn't make me feel good, and I end up burning out, right? So, I think, like, me just choosing to go all in on one thing has been really helpful for me, and even I worked full time for a little while as I was starting the business, and I understand, like, kind of the challenges that go with it. But just being able to have that intentional time, I think, was really helpful. Where I was like, okay, I'm at my shift work for 24 hours. I'm not going to think about business. Okay, now I'm at home. I'm going to be all in on my business. So, like, creating that intentional time was helpful for me, and that's, like, something I teach my clients to do too as they're pursuing other things.
Yeah, we heard, harmony from another guest, he was talking about not balance, but harmony, and it's like when you're doing one thing, this is what you're doing, and you're giving your all to that thing. And when you're doing something else, you're giving your all to that. And especially in a field like nursing, and especially in a field like flight nursing, where it's like all on you and your team. What is it? It's just a pilot, medic, and a nurse, right?
Yeah, yeah, and every team looks a little bit different, but that's what my team looked like. We had a medic, a pilot, and a nurse.
Yeah, you can't be like, trying to save somebody's life and like, oh shoot, like, can we get this refinance? Like, how are we gonna get this tenant out? I mean, you really do have to be focused. So it's like, yeah, finding that way to just kind of be all in when you're doing whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think, like, part of the problem, I mean, that I face as an overachiever, and a lot of my clients face, is that you have all these ideas, right? And it's like sometimes you can spend 8 hours on one idea and you're like, what did I really even do that was productive? So really making, like, productive time and setting that time aside, and then really taking time for yourself, and your family and the things that you want to do, is really important. I've learned that as I've moved into entrepreneurship. Sometimes, like, nothing is urgent and needed right now. It's like sometimes slowing down helps me just be more impactful in my business and not doing all of the things. So that's really been helpful for me, like, not having that sense of urgency that it has to all get done right now, too.
Yeah, there's like the difference between like important and urgent and like all those different things and like prioritizing. Cause it is like,
Yeah.
I'll write out a list of things to do for the day and it's like 15 different things. And I'm like, I mean, like 10 of these, if they don't happen today, nothing's going to happen. I'll just do them tomorrow.
Yeah. But I think that's hard. It's hard to come from, especially in jobs that we do, where it's like, we need to prioritize and we need to get it done right now because it's
Yeah.
life or death. And then really bringing that into our everyday life, it's hard to turn that switch off. And it's hard to like not make it life or death for ourselves, especially as overachievers. So that's like a big topic that we coach on too, is just like how do we let go and like show compassion on ourselves too in the moments where it doesn't have to be life and death.
Yeah, taking some of that, like, yeah, just because, yeah, like, I did a ER, so it's like everything's happening at the same time and everything has to happen now, and it's just like so I it's very much that mindset.
Yeah.
Might have to call you for a consult.
You're gonna do great because you only have to do it for a short amount of time, right? And you
Yeah.
got your investment things going on.
Well, you do have 2 for 1 for me and Josh.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So we do a segment called the Final Five. We ask the same five questions for everyone.
Okay.
And the first question is, what's a top financial resource that you found? Where do you go to educate yourself?
Oh, financial. Okay, you're asking tough questions about finances. I told you that my husband handles all of the.
Well, how about mindset?
You can phone a friend.
You're doing the life coaching, everything, so what's, like, something like, if somebody's trying to work on their mindset, like, what's a good resource for them? Other than your coaching, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's like drawing putting okay, so there's so many coaches out there, and I think it's like you said before about really high level executives, high level athletes, professional athletes, they all have a coach. So it's like getting yourself in the mindset that there's someone out there who can help you exactly with what you're looking for and being willing to kind of find who that person is for you, who's a good fit for you. And sometimes that means reading a book. Sometimes that means listening to a podcast. Sometimes that means following someone on Instagram. Sometimes that means hiring a coach. So it's really like, I think, being open to what is that thing for you that's going to get you to the next level. And we all kind of need that mentor. I mean, especially as nurses, we know how good it is to have a great mentor and to also, I have this big belief, hire someone of where you want to be. So put yourself with people of where you want to go because they're just going to pull you up and the conversation is going to be different. So I think being willing to open yourself up to like what's going to help you in your particular situation, whatever avenue that's going to be, I would say for sure start there.
So number 2 is usually, so this is like, what would you tell yourself as a new grad? So most people, when they're new grads, are like 20. You were like already 4 careers into your life. So, but what but what would you tell yourself as a new grad? Like, what advice would you give yourself? And you can even talk to like your 20-year-old self, whatever applies the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like go back to your intuition and what you really want. I think a lot of times, even in life, even as a new grad or wherever you are, you think about things that you want and then immediately the obstacles come up and you're like, "Oh, I can't do that." And you like quietly quit or you quietly kind of go back on whatever that goal is. I would just like offer the advice to a new grad, stick with what you want to do and go after it. And do whatever it takes to get there. And put people in your life that are going to help you get there. And I think like just sometimes they hear a lot of chatter from other people as they're a new grad. So really like one, put people in your life that are going to help mentor you and get there. And then two, stick with what you want to do. No matter the obstacles that come up in your brain or come up physically for you, just stick with it because you will get there if that's something that you want to do. And hiring a mentor and a coach is like my biggest thing for everything, right? Like I just feel like having that person that you can go to, that you can trust, that you can vent to is just so pivotal, especially in nursing. It's really pivotal to have that person.
Oh yeah.
Someone that'll call you out if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing too.
Yeah. And someone that you feel comfortable taking criticism from because that's all nursing is about is knowing that you don't know everything and where is it that you can constantly be changing and growing. You want that person that's going to be on your side, but also be able to offer that to you so that you can grow.
All right. Number three is, what excites you about the next 12 months?
Honestly, it sounds so cliche, but I just want to help so many more nurses. One, get into flight nursing. I meet so many people who are like, I've wanted to do this for 15 or 20 years, and this has been the reason that's held me back. I don't have enough time and experience, or I don't feel like I'm enough. And I just want to help more people make that dream happen for themselves, especially the ones who have thought, oh, I've kind of dabbled in maybe wanting to do it or not. I want to help more people get there. The second thing is, I just want to help more healthcare workers, nurses especially, grow their confidence level. Because if I can help you grow your confidence level, then you're going to show up more well rounded and want to go to your shift and help more people and save more lives. And that is like so meaningful to me. I think that's the reason why my coaching has really taken off, because my why was super solid getting into flight nursing. I wanted to save lives. I wanted to directly save lives. And I've realized through coaching, I'm saving more lives through coaching because I'm helping people more confidently show up. And that's trickling into every community all over the world. And so it sounds cliche, but I just want to help more people and more communities be able to do that.
I think it's okay to be cliche when that's when
It's
that's what you're
okay.
saying.
We'll allow it. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
So number 4 is if you were to tell people to do one thing right now, what would you tell them to do?
One thing that I really work on with my clients is being willing to feel whatever feeling they're afraid of feeling. So, whether it's doubt or being scared or fear or embarrassment or disappointment, like I just offer everybody just dip your toe in whatever that thing is you're afraid to feel. Because if you can dip your toe in it and if you can start to have an okayness with it, that's what's going to create success for you, is knowing that that one thing or that one feeling you fear is not going to take over or kill you. And that's really what's going to help propel you forward, is not always on the days that you feel good. It's actually on the days you don't feel good and doing it anyway. And so that's like one thing. If they could do it now, is just dip your toe in that one feeling that you don't want to experience and allow yourself to experience it a little by little every day.
I like that.
Number 5, we're gonna throw another financial one at you. If you wanna, like, curveball it and throw it back at us, that's fine.
Okay.
So what's the biggest financial mistake that you've made, and what'd you learn from it?
Or the biggest financial mistake your husband made.
This might be terrible to say because I know a lot of nurses have done this. Okay. I got 2 degrees. I got a degree, obviously, in communications with the emphasis in broadcast journalism. And then I got my nursing degree. And at the time, like, I just wanted to get my bachelor's degree so fast in nursing that I paid like, I think 35 grand for like a 18-month program. And if I had to go back and do it, I would have, I think, been a little bit more diligent in looking up what's going to be the best, least amount of cost for the least amount of time I want to get through it. I just wanted to do it and be done with it. So I think like, if I could go back and do that, I would have been more diligent in like looking for a program that would have been a little less pricey,
Yeah.
and getting it, because as you guys know, I don't know, if you have having your BSN really doesn't matter that much. And as a flight nurse, you don't
Yeah,
even need it. So,
yeah.
if I could have had a little bit more diligence in that, I think that that would have helped, the financial portion of getting my BSN.
Yep, that's a great one, and I went to a private school for my undergraduate, and I wish I had gone to some community college because degrees all the same. None of the hospitals ask me for where I got my degree from ever.
No, and same with, like, people who are getting their ADN too, right? Like, I actually went to a cost-effective community college, but some people are paying so much money for private, but it's like no one cares where you got it from. They just care that you pass the NCLEX and you have your license. So that is one thing. If I could do that over again, I would have, maybe been a little bit more financially sound with where I got my BSN.
But yeah, you definitely need to do well in nursing school, like, obviously, especially if you're gonna go on to other stuff, but I remember these kids, like, stressing, like, I was, like, 6 we did quarters, and I was 6 quarter, and the first quarter nurses would just be, like, stressing and stuff. They're like, "Man, I only got an 84% on the test." I'm like, "Dude, your RN license does not say your grade point average. Just relax. You're gonna be fine. Like, just get the license, get the job. You're gonna learn way more on the job anyways." But
Yeah, and I would say, like, one thing that I really tell my nursing student clients is that, like, I was not a great student, like, I'm a terrible test taker. It took me 3 times to pass the NCLEX, I took me, like, 4 times to pass my CCRN, took me, like, 8 times to get my CFRN, like, and that's not something I'm afraid or embarrassed to share, because I think a lot of people aren't good test takers, but just know what you are good at. Like, I'm good at when you show me a skill, I'm gonna learn it right away, and I'm always gonna remember it. And so, like, I think it's just like, if you're not doing well in nursing school, you're not a good test taker, that's okay. Like, focus on the areas that you are really good at and just magnify those, because that's always what's going to help you in your nursing career.
definitely. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so I do all my marketing on Instagram. You can go to Janessa Dean Coaching. And there's a link there. You can see my podcast linked up, and then you can also book a consult if you're interested in kind of finding out more how to work with me. And then I have a lot of great free content that's on my Instagram as well. So that's kind of the way to kind of look out for me.
Cool. Tell us about your podcast, real
Yeah,
quick.
it's called Frontline Static. And I on the podcast, a lot of it is just some of my current clients and previous clients. I'm having conversations with them about what kind of coaching is meant for them. A lot of people in healthcare have never had a coach before. So it gives you an idea of like a little bit of what it's like to coach with me and what experiences that my clients get when they do. So a lot of it is interviews. And then I have some content on there as well, webinars that I've done, like how to become a flight nurse. I have like 4 of those on there. And then other things that I talk about, like intentional time, imposter syndrome, and doubt, other topics that I'll kind of mention on the podcast as well.
Well, thank you for coming on. This has been awesome, and yeah, I'll let you know how the cave goes.
Yeah.
Maybe you should do that before you go back to your ER job. Spend 3 days.
But I might not go back if I do the cave.
That's true. That might not be a bad thing though
Yeah.
either.
I spend 3 days in a cave thinking about management. I might just run away.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.